We got 4 spectacular lions in the house today. And in particular, we've got Eric Mann. I'm going to let Jimmy introduce everybody in detail. But Eric played baseball here, is an athlete, and has done great things in the world. Mark Cabaniss is in Nashville music industry. Mike Kelly lives in Cincinnati, knows everybody in Cincinnati, and he played basketball here. And Kelly Holdway lives in South Carolina and is working with a nonprofit and is doing great things. So we've assembled, I promised y'all when I got here, we're going to do things different. I promised you that we're going to focus on helping you find what you want to do with your life. And I promise you we're going to bring people to this place so that you can begin to hear what they've done with their life. So tonight, I want you to think about, when you leave here, when you're driving away from Mars Hill and Bailey Mountain, fading into your mirror, where are you going? What are you going to do with your life? Where are you headed to? Because y'all, life is more than basketball, and baseball, and art, and theater, and all the things that everybody in this room is doing. You're going to have your whole life ahead of you, and our world needs you. Our world needs you right now. As soon as you leave here, our world needs you to be engaged and help, because there's so many things going on that need lions. So I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to sit down. But God, this night is about you. They have come from all over from Jacksonville and Cincinnati and Nashville to give you some time with them. You need to take advantage of them. You see them on campus tomorrow, grab them, lean on them, talk to them, get to know them. When you leave here, these people can help you, okay? They are here because they want to help you. And so, starting tonight and the rest of my time in Mars Hill, as far as we can see, we're going to be bringing people here to help you. So I want you to know that, and welcome to the program.
Good evening. My name is Jimmy Knight, and I'm the director of the Cothran Center for Career Readiness. And tonight is the culmination of a lot of thinking and planning. And I just wanted to welcome everyone here. I'm very delighted to see this many people and to see trustees and staff members and coaches, but primarily you guys. I am really, really ecstatic about this. So thank you. Kelly Holdway, class of 2002, is the executive secretary of what's called JWB Farms, and her abilities have made a real impact on this organization because she comes from a very rich administrative background. She has served for people in many years of service, including Capitol Hill. Not very stressful at all, okay? Kelly comes from, notably worked with Senator Elizabeth Dole on the campaigns of Senator Dole, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and served as the Director of Scheduling for RNC Chairman Michael Steele. Now, Kelly ensures that the operations pertaining to animal care and customer service are held to a high standard. And welcome her, if you will, please.
Thank you.
She's also on the board, the Alumni Board here at Mars Hill. Mike Kelly is currently a resident of Cincinnati, as President Floyd mentioned, and he is a business consultant and financial planner. Now, he is the managing member of Right Path Enterprises. Basically, he coaches and helps people get perform better, all leadership training and so forth. He has worked for Macy's and Michelin. He was a vice president in charge of learning and development for the credit and customer service business unit at Macy's. Mike is engaged in many civic activities, and notably, he is the vice chair of the Board of Trustees here at Mars Hill. Please welcome. Eric Mann traveled from his home in Jacksonville, Florida to be here tonight, and he is currently the CEO of the Y in Jacksonville. Prior to that, he was the CEO of the Y in the greater Pittsburgh area. And his list of civic engagement is so long I can't fit it on this sheet of paper. It's like reading the great American novel of travel. He's been everywhere. LA, Cincinnati, Charlotte, New York, Chicago, Florida. He is also a Board of Trustees member. Please welcome Eric. And last and certainly not least at all, Mark Cabaniss is a music publisher, writer, producer, broadcaster, and speaker. He is president and CEO of Jubilate. Did I say that right?
Jubilate.
Jubilate.
Just buy the music.
Okay, buy the music. Music group and a worldwide music publishing and recording company. His compositions have been performed in numerous places around the world. He is a multiple recipient of ASCAP's Popular Music Award, the NAMM Believe in Music Award, and the Dove Award-winning producer. Mark is the author of 2 books, Confessions of a Shameless Name Dropper, and this is really the one that interests me the most, The Music Business Essentials, a guide for aspiring musicians, professionals, sorry. He serves as an adjunct professor of the music business school at Belmont University, and he currently lives in Nashville. And one thing that I love about Mark is you can find out more about him at www.markcabanis.com. Mark is also a Board of Trustee member here at Mars Hill. Please welcome Mark. So why are we here? Why are the 5 of us up here speaking, and why was this event planned? The 4 speakers are in front of you are here because they have shown an incredible love and affection for this school over the years. And you'll see it in the way that they walk, in the way that they talk, and in their actions. They have been extremely generous in their time and their talents. They've traveled far, but they've done this to be with you. That's the big secret of everything that we're doing. It's all about you. We are betting that you are the next great generation from Mars Hill. So as you look at these folks up here, the smart mammal will say, these are the people that call the shots. These are the very type of people, I can tell you from 20 years of corporate life, that these are the people that you will need to impress to get your first job. So we've assembled them, and we want to hear more about what they say. But primarily, sit up and take note of their stories. So we'll just go ahead and dive in and get started. We haven't really primed you guys, and I'm sorry if I catch you a little bit flat-footed, but how many of you had a plan A? You knew exactly what it was that you wanted to do when you were getting out of school. And how many of you had plan A to work exactly as planned? Nobody. So one at a time, if we go down the row here, what was your most compelling surprise when you got out of school, and what was the most surprising thing that happened as a big eye-opening event in your life right after school as you were entering professional life?
Since I'm first, I graduated on a Friday from Mars Hill and started work on a Monday, the following Monday. And the first aha was when I had to be at work on time Monday morning. I was getting a paycheck. There was accountability, responsibilities, but it was really about, this is real. You go to school 4 years, you study, and the first thing you want to do is hurry up and graduate. Then you graduate, and life starts to happen. If I had it to do over, I'd be a student forever. And I say that from the standpoint of, once you start in the workforce, that's the rest of your life. And being prepared, not knowing what you don't know, responsibility, how to be an adult, how to pay your bills, how to get the lights turned on, all those things that up until then, I was in school and I was at home. And you realize real quickly what life is about. You make mistakes with credit cards. I don't know if you made them already, but I did when I got out of school. So it's the biggest part is you become responsible. You become an adult once you get out of school and you start your career, or you start working, whether it's your career or not. You become an adult real quick.
Well, I also graduated from Mars Hill, but I was on a Sunday, as a matter of fact. And then I went to grad school, University of Tennessee. And so I delayed the real world for a couple of years, which was nice. And then I found myself teaching at a college before I'd even graduated from UT. I'd gotten this job. That's a whole other long story, which I won't bore us with tonight, but that job kind of fell in my lap. So the compelling surprise, I guess you could say, I don't know how compelling it was when I was teaching and running a radio station there in Owensboro, Kentucky, when I was 24 years old. The thing that I'm thinking about you guys, we're all thinking about you guys, is President said this evening, is that you know, what hit me was like a ton of bricks was the grind, the daily grind. When you're in school, everything is so prescribed, pretty much. Not like high school, of course, but you have a course of study and you go to class and you study and you get grades, and if you do well enough, you get a diploma and you move on. And so, and that's great. I mean, obviously what happens in those 4 years is a lot more complicated than that. There's the life-changing experience. There is that happens. But again, the grind is what I found was, again, I don't know how compelling it was, but it was, you know, if you get a job that is a 9-to-5 job, as I had back in those days, you find like, oh, is this all there is? You know, I went to school and all that stuff, and then you kind of hit that wall. So I say that to prepare you that, you know, when you get out of school, you have to get ready for that grind. But listen, the grind, and even if you get a job or have a career where it's not so routine, day in and day out, there is that day in and day out, and suddenly the world is wide open and it's not so prescribed anymore. And so, so that's something to prepare yourself for and to be ready for, and to have that vision as to what you want your life to look like when you do graduate. And the other thing that I think was a wonderful surprise to me in my life and career over the years is the best things that have happened to me professionally are those things that ultimately I went out and made happen. By the grace of God, I would say, and add. Because, you know, it's, again, in college, you know, you follow the rules, you do everything, you work hard, you study, and then you graduate, you know. But in life then, the doors open wide and there aren't these guardrails anymore. You have to go out and make it happen and make your dreams come true. No one is going to do that for you. And I got a job, yes, but the best things that have happened to me in my career are the things that I said, what if? What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I, excuse me, what if I called this person? What if I called that person? And when I did that, thankfully, incredible, exciting things happened.
I really don't have to answer the question. These two guys have really answered it very well. It's a very great answers. But I would say for me that when I actually left Mars Hill, I felt academically, from a theory standpoint, I had a good understanding of business management. I got into my first job, and I was managing people who were old enough to be my parents, and I realized that the theory wasn't going to do me a lot of good, that I had to make some mistakes. And I was okay, you know, it was okay, it was to be expected. So I did make some mistakes. But one of the things I've learned over the years is that it's really not about other people, it's about me continuing on that learning journey and having a growth mindset, understanding that certainly I had a great foundation here, but the journey of learning continues, and even today I'm not a done finished product yet. I'm continuing to learn. But leading people who were old enough to be my parents allowed me then to stretch myself, certainly, and help them in ways that I didn't really understand that I would be able to. And a lot of it started with having a level of humility. Although I was the boss, having a level of humility, respecting them, caring about them, listening to their ideas, and implementing some of those ideas. And as I started to develop relationships with them, a lot of them were willing to go through the wall for me. They really believed in what I was doing as a leader. But at the same time, I was working for someone who was autocratic, who was nasty, and because I was a black man, didn't think I deserved the job that I had, although I was more educated than he was. So being able to navigate that whole world as well was a great learning experience for me. But I'll tell you, at the end of the day, the thing that I walk away with, and it's a Jim Rohn quote, and is that we should work harder on ourselves than we do on our jobs. Because if we work hard on ourselves, we're going to be great at our jobs. What I see now in many areas, for-profit, non-profit, is that we have a lot of people who are leading, but they're not capable of leading. other people. And because of that, companies are losing billions of dollars annually. If we could just turn those things around and focus on working on ourselves, and if that's the only thing you hear from me tonight that you take away, it is the most important thing in my mind, that we work harder on ourselves than we do our jobs or anybody else. Because if we do that, the other stuff's a lot easier.
Okay, I may not even need this microphone. So, most surprising thing, I like to call this the time that I accidentally joined a campaign. So basically, I had an internship here at the college in the public relations office. We'll come back to that. Side note, I had that internship because I asked for it. Hint, hint. But we went to an event, and Elizabeth Dole's campaign had just started, and her campaign manager was there, and I was just really impressed with the details of the operation. And so at 20, because I hadn't even turned 21 yet, I walked up to her campaign manager and I said, hey, I'm really impressed with how well you guys have done this. It operates like this amazing well-oiled machine. Can I do an internship for you? And he said yes. And then, wait for it, he paid me to leave college and come on the road and do an internship, and even better, my advisors and my professors figured out how to make that possible, because guys, we're at a school small enough that we can do that. So I would tell you, man, I was shocked when he was like, yeah, that sounds great. But I would tell you the most surprising thing I learned is that if you're willing to step up to the plate, somebody will take a chance on you, but only if you're willing to take a chance on yourself.
So thank you for all of that. I would like to cue up you guys talking to each other a little bit about discernment, about discerning a pathway, and being smart enough and wise enough to see the opportunities and seize upon that. If you could perhaps tell us how a liberal arts education that you received here it might have opened your eyes. Any particular class, any particular professor, any event that might have taken place. Could y'all share that with us for a little bit?
We'll keep it going. I was telling President Floyd, probably when I was in school, we had what we call mini-mester. We were on a quarter system, so every January, we had to do 3 out of 4 years. We'd come back right after New Year's and do this one class a week, and it was an elective, but it was the strange classes. One year I took gender. Next year I took bowling. But one I took, it was a psychology class, and it turned my whole outlook on what my life was about as a person. And all of us you will go through this. The key is if you recognize it, and God has a purpose for me, and I'm fortunate that my personal and professional life reflects my personal passion. But it was really around psychology. And why psychology? Psychology is really about understanding people. And it was in Belk Hall, and this professor was crazy. And we would do crazy things in class. He would jump up on the tables, we'd talk about, but it was really about understanding people. To this day, my wife thinks I'm crazy. I enjoy going to Costco on Sunday afternoons. If you know Costco, that's crazy. I go to movies by myself, and I people watch. And I actually look and say, why did they do this? But the other side of that is, and what has helped me be successful in what I do now is, I understand, I observe people's behavior. And that has allowed me to communicate better with them as individuals versus looking at a group like this and say, well, they're all the same because they're basketball players, they're soccer players, they're music teachers. No, it allowed me to really open my eyes to human behavior, which I find very fascinating. I ended up getting a major in psychology because of that class and that professor. And I would say out of all of what I learned here at Mars Hill, my ability to communicate with anybody, whether I worked in South Central LA, I work with billionaires. I have no problem in going and working with either of them because I understand how to communicate to anyone, and it really, the baseline was the psychology exposure I had at Mars Hill.
How many of you guys and all of us have seen the first Superman movie? Raise your hands, I'm curious. Okay, who saw with Christopher Reeve? Remember it? Okay, 3. Okay, you all need to go rent that movie. Come on.
We have, but they
President Floyd, let's have a class on movies. We need a class on movies, okay? Now listen, Jimmy was talking about discernment, and he, into the introduction said I teach adjunct at Belmont University, which I do, so I'm used to you guys, and they're having class just a little while ago, as a matter of fact, and I was not able to be there because I'm happy to be here. But I tell that class, Superman, my favorite line, you're talking about discernment, in that movie, the villain is Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman, and his stooge, Ned Beatty, says, he looks at his stooge, the genius villain, he says, you know, he said, some people can look at the ingredients on a chewing gum wrapper and tell you how to make chewing gum. He said, I can look at the ingredients of a chewing gum wrapper and unlock the secrets of the universe. So to me, when I say that to students, I say the difference is, can you connect the dots or not? If you can connect the dots, you can go far in life. It's not just, you know, you can look at an opportunity, or as Kelly did, talking about, you know, an internship as just an internship, or meeting anyone at a gathering like this as just a meeting as someone at a gathering like this, or you can look at it as your future. And I always, thank God, have been able to try to do that, to try to connect those dots. So that's the gift that, you know, I would want to give everyone, is that idea that when you connect the dots, you can change the world. And as far as any professor that inspired me, I would say Bill Thomas. Some of you will know that name. He was the choral director here. He went to Furman then and chaired the department. Just retired this past spring. Wayne Presley, Ray Babley, the band directors and all that stuff. I'll tell you one more thing, and that is that while I was a senior at Mars Hill, remember cassette tapes? We remember cassette tapes. You guys don't even know what television is, okay? But I took a cassette tape player and made an audio journal. And I captured the last 3 weeks every day of my senior year before I graduated. That was 170 years ago, because that was 1822 when I was here, okay? But even now, I will listen to that every 2 or 3 years. And one of the things I say, Jimmy, on that tape, that audio cassette, is I want to carry that Mars Hill spirit with me. And that Mars Hill spirit that I walked away with was what, yes, Wayne Presley and Ray Babley and Bill Thomas instilled in me, and that was of professionalism. Let your excellence be your protest, I would say. Let your excellence be your protest. Let your excellence speak for you. And if there's one thing that I learned from Mars Hill, it's that.
I would say synoptics, that was a great class. Logic was a great class. Charlie Nairn, he was the corporate finance professor. Michael Foster and I talked a little bit about corporate finance. Those courses stretched me in a good way, challenged my thinking, but they were also diverse enough. I even took a German culture class to stretch my thinking around possibilities. And what I walked away with, though, was understanding how to learn, because I realized after I got into the business world that things were changing. And the longer I was out there, the more rapidly change started to occur. And we see that now with innovation, creativity, AI, artificial intelligence, and all the things that are going on. The ability to learn and adapt is so important, and it's going to become even more important in the future. I just think about some of the things that happened over my career, And one of the things that I think about is having opportunities to create departments that didn't exist and save millions of dollars for companies. And I give credit in many ways to Mars Hill for the ability to do that, for the ability to think outside the box, and also for the ability to be okay with failure. Because when you're changing, when things are dynamic and moving, you're going to fail. How do I adjust to failure? Do I just give up and quit? Or do I learn from that and I dust myself off, I get up and I operate going forward, and I'm better the next time? I also learned through those experiences to deal better with failure. And I find that I work with a lot of people who are immobilized by fear at a lot of different levels within organizations. And I think that's one of the things that you'll have to deal with when you get out of here and you're into your career or whatever you're doing. How will I navigate failure? How will I deal with change? Those are two things that you will see in ways that I cannot even comprehend, because it's going to be more rapid than what I've experienced over my career, certainly.
Okay, so I have three. I would say the beauty of a liberal arts education and being at Mars Hill is that it taught me to learn how to learn. To echo very much your sentiment, at some schools, you're only going to take your major classes and you're going to leave, just so everybody knows my major isn't even offered at Mars Hill anymore, and I'm doing just fine. But if you don't know how to problem solve, if you don't know how to take the information you're given, figure out how it relates to you and move forward, it doesn't matter how much degree major information you have, because the world is always changing. The other thing, and this is going to sound crazy, that I actually learned not in a classroom but in an organization, is the concept of time management. So I pledged a sorority, and I know Greek life is a lot smaller here now, so I think this applies to any club, but I pledged a sorority in the second semester of my freshman year with a full class load, and a dad that really appreciates good grades. And what it taught me was literally to manage my time very well, including how much sleep do I need? You know, can I fit this in? Can I not fit this in? What is a realistic expectation of my day? How can I maximize the time that I have and not kill myself? And let me tell you, that is a skill you are going to want to know when you leave this campus. A lot of people are like, oh gosh, well, how did you end up being a scheduler? That's what I did in DC. It's, don't worry if you've never heard about it, it's an entirely made up political career. But it allowed me to be successful in managing someone else's life to help them be successful. The third thing I'll tell you, down to classes, it's funny you should mention a film class, because probably the two most powerful classes I ever took on this campus were ethics and film. Ethics I knew was going to be a heavy-hitting class, but it was actually taught by three different professors at the time: Kathy Meacham, George Perry, Alan Smith. And it allowed you every day to take an issue, a scenario, an issue at a hospital system, an issue with the government, and have each professor from three different departments weigh in on their opinion. And it caused me to think about, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I think what I think? And I promise you, you're going to need that later. The second most impactful class I took was film. And I thought it was going to be so super fun, and I thought we were going to watch Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption and just kind of nap on the floor. And it wasn't. It was with Dr. George Perry, who's not here anymore. And we watched 10 of the most thought-provoking films I've ever seen, that caused you to think about, how do you feel about people that are different than you? How do you define success? How do you manage grief? And it was powerful. And he allowed us just to have a conversation as a group, and it created kind of a sense of community, a sense of circle, that it was a safe place to exchange ideas. And then you really started to learn from not just the professor, but from the people in the room whose lives and experiences were very different from mine. And that really helped me.
I took that class too.
It was awesome.
I loved it. It was a great class. We should start it again.
I'll teach it.
So going back, and let's stay down on Kelly's side of the table just for a second. Professionalism came up. and habit forming came up. Thinking back to your time as a student, and you just mentioned time management, if you could go back and talk to yourself, what would you give yourself a kick in the pants on? What, in your opinions, constitutes professionalism in your world right now, and how can we all start practicing those things now so that when we get to graduation, when we go back to the office tomorrow, we can be more polished, we can be more proactive in our professional walk? Any insights that you guys would care to share?
Okay, I'll start. If I am time management, yes, absolutely learned that. But if I could tell you nothing else tonight, I would tell you this from my time as a student at Mars Hill. Everyone on this stage, every faculty member, every staff member, every administration member on this campus wants you to succeed. We only succeed as an organization if you succeed as a graduate. But part of the reason I had success, part of the reason the doors were open to me, was because I had the courage to step forward to those professors, staff members, faculty members, and ask. So I would tell you, if you see a professor and they're interested in something that you're interested in, ask them if they can share an experience with you. Or Kathy Meacham took me to the ethics committee meeting at Mission St. Joe's, now it's Mission, because I was fascinated in what hospital ethics looked like. You know, if you see an internship, show up. If there's a dinner with trustees and students are allowed to come, raise your hand and ask to go, because you don't know who's in that room that's going to change your life 5 years from now. And if you don't show up and you don't make those connections now, you may regret the opportunity. You can't go back. So I would tell you, go in every room you can. Have every conversation you can. We want to help you, but we just need to know who's ready to go.
So the question was professionalism, is that right? What I learned here, or how do I define it? Or
What does it mean to you on a daily basis?
yeah, what does it mean? We all have a brand. So wherever you show up, you have one now. People see you a certain way. They assess you a certain way. Is that good? Is that right? No, but it's reality. So when they see you, what do they think? What comes to mind? Professionalism is something for me that was a learning thing over the years. I'm a first-generation college student. My parents went to the 7th grade. They were put out of school. My father was a janitor for most of his life, so he didn't work in a professional environment. I really didn't know any professional people. So coming to Mars Hill, number one, was an interesting experience for me. But I had people who invested in me, certainly informal mentorships, who shared their stories, who encouraged me, who listened to me, and in many ways who loved on me, and that was a great thing. Over the years, I read everything I could get my hands on around business, around money, around leadership, around life. And one of the things I've come to understand is that professionalism, my brand, I wanted to start with ethics, someone of integrity, someone who has character, someone that you can trust, someone certainly going to do a great job. The thing that I've seen over the years is as you take on more responsibility, you have more control. And a lot of times that's over resources, it's over the lives of people, and it's a huge high calling, huge responsibility. Am I capable of handling that with care? Am I capable of reflecting my Lord and Savior as I'm doing that? And if I am, what does that all look like? So taking some time to consider that has been something that's paid great dividends for me, as something that I'm still growing in, as something that I would encourage you to get clarity around for yourself. Who are you? What is your brand? When you're not around and people are talking about you, when you talk about the network, you having people that are speaking about you, speaking up for you, recommending you for things, what are they saying about you? Do they want you involved? Do they want you in their lives? Are they willing to put their names out there for you for a job, for a leadership opportunity in a nonprofit, for many different types of opportunities? And if they're not, you want to reflect on that and determine what needs to change about me. And change is okay. You know, we're all growing. We're all going to make mistakes, but being clear on what your personal brand is. And when you step out into the corporate world, you're going to hear a lot about personal brand, because corporations and even nonprofits, a lot of it is around how people assess you, be it through appraisals, which is a formal way, but also there are informal ways.
Well, the great Christian theologian C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity talks about how we should practice. Well, he says, what you pretend to be, you tend to become. What you pretend to be, you tend to become. He talks about putting on Christianity. Even when we don't feel like being a Christian, if we act like being a Christian, soon we become that. It's the Greek mythology of, I can't remember which character it was, someone will remember better than I, but they put the mask on and they take the mask off, and that face has taken the form of that mask, totally different because that face was embedded in that mask. So again, the habits that we have tend to become whom we are. And so professionalism, I say to you, begins now. So what can you do to be a professional at Mars Hill? Well, you show up to class on time. You turn your assignments in on time. That's all you've got right now. You're not getting a paycheck so that, or recording in a studio like I deal with lots of musicians and things. You've got your currency right now for the 4 years you're here is doing the best of your ability to be a student. And when you graduate, whenever that is going to be, and I echo so much of what everyone's saying here and what Kelly is saying, we all are pulling for you. That's the thing in the trustee meetings. We say, how can we get these students across that finish line? So when you do get across that finish line, and we want you to get across that finish line, you don't suddenly assume greatness just because you have a piece of paper. See? You have practiced being a professional before you walked to get to that diploma. You've practiced it for 4 years. So that habit comes naturally. If you get in the habit of exercising 3 times a week, suddenly it just is, it's natural, isn't it? You practice if you're in a sport, if you're in music, if you're in whatever, you practice that to get better at it, right? Well, you must practice being a professional. And again, when you're a student, that means showing up on time, turning in the paper, and doing more than is expected. Don't just, if the professor says 1 page, well, maybe write a page and a half. Now, we don't want professors to have to grade 2 long papers. I got that. But you see what I'm saying? You don't assume greatness just because you get a piece of paper. You practice professionalism now. And then I'll also say that, you know, in the 30 years I've been in the music business, I've dealt with a lot of professionals, just like all of us have up here. And, you know, I've met some very, very talented people in the music business. Nashville, you trip over, you know, 18 singers on your way to work in that town, okay? So it's not the singer that has the best voice that gets the gig or the best player that gets the gig in Nashville. It's the best singer and player and producer who's the best professional. Because talent is in abundance in that town. That's a dime a dozen. Talent is the prerequisite to showing up and being able to even be invited to the party, see, in that town. So what are you going to do over and above the God-given talent that you have to get the job? You're going to be a professional. You're going to show up on time. You're going to have a great attitude in the studio. You're going to hone your craft and do your best. And so there are a lot of very talented people in Nashville who are great producers, and they're driving UPS trucks. Nothing against UPS. I hear they have a lovely retirement program. But if you're a producer, you don't want to drive a UPS truck. You want to produce. And so if you don't be a professional and play the gig, there are about 3,000 people in line waiting to get that job. So again, start practicing it now and be a professional. High school is a dim memory, you know. Baby, game on. You are here. It is time. Make it happen. Be a professional.
Well, I was an athlete all through high school and in college, and so I use metaphors from sports all the time. And I know we got a lot of athletes here and non-athletes. Being professional, one is about being accountable and do what you say you're going to do. It sounds very simple, but in life, that will go a long way. If you say you're going to show up on time, and it's required, show up. And show up means show up physically, but also show up mentally. Tonight's a good example about professionalism. I get invited to talk with you. Had I walked in with a t-shirt, some jeans, what would your perception of me be? Be different. I didn't represent my profession, I didn't represent myself, and so sometimes that's part of showing up. My mentality from day one when I started working, I wanted to win. That win looked like having more kids in day camp, having the best this, the best that, and so it drove me in my career, and that's part of, Mike talked about the brand. If you ask anyone about Eric Mann now, they're going to tell you he's good with people, he knows how to raise money, he manages organizations, he can build, he's a good person, he's committed. If he says he's going to do something, he does it in the best way that I can. That's my brand, but it started with simple things. Athletes, you got practice. Be on time. You want to win. I want to win in the worst way. I won't win at all costs, because sometimes that all costs takes you down a way that you really don't want to do from an ethics standpoint, but I want to win the right way, and every day I go in, I try to be better. I try to be better. And so whatever the integrity you have, that ambition you take now as an athlete, you're trying to get better and you're trying to win. When you get out of school, you're going to be competing against all those other folks who are trying to get to that next level, and that mentality of winning means your drive, your accountability. What is that brand? Again, you create your brand, but quite frankly, other people create your brand and you have nothing to do with it. And so you want to make sure that there's no doubt when they see you, this is someone they can trust to do whatever is expected of you, but do it at the highest level that you can. And as Kelly said, if you get a chance to raise your hand to do something without getting paid, that's a hard one for, especially your group, because you want to get paid as soon as you do something, right? What I would tell you is raise your hand when you're not getting paid to learn something different than you're already doing. So you start stacking skills. You start stacking skills, and that becomes part of your brand. That professionalism is about how do you continue to want to grow and do what it takes versus I'll do it if you pay me. Well, I'm not going to pay you if you haven't demonstrated that you can do the job, just because. And so those are the kinds of things you talk about professionalism. It's how you show up both physically and mentally, and then your attitude and how you go about your day-to-day work as a person. And so professionalism looks a whole different ways, but I think that those are some of the basics for me. I've been very fortunate to have success because of those, and it's basic blocking and tackling. We got football players here, right? You start where? Blocking and tackling, basic, and then you start working your way out to doing all those other things you got to execute. But those basic things, as you do whatever you want to do, that's how you start building that image, that brand around professionalism.
Thank you. I'm glad that you used the word stretching, because we're going to bring some questions, I'm hoping, from the audience. I'm going to ask you guys to stretch a little bit beyond your comfort zone just for a second and exercise some professionalism, if you will, and ask you, do you have any questions of the panel? We're getting near the top of the hour and the end mark of everything. So questions that you might like to ask any of the individuals up here. Hello, come on, you got to have a question. Yes, sir. Ma'am, sorry.
So if someone wanted to learn more about what you do, would you be willing to allow us to contact you?
Yes.
No. I'm kidding. Of course, of course.
I would say yes, and I'd also encourage you, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, develop one. I'd take an invitation from anyone in the audience. And if I can be of help, certainly would be happy to do that. But I want to go back to one thing that we've talked a lot about work. One of the things I want to share and encourage everyone to think about is everything else outside of work. Work is just one piece of life so often, and I got trapped in this. It can become all of life. You're much more than what you do. So there's a lot there, but you are much more than what you do. And again, Michael and I had a great conversation, and one of the things I shared with him was this 7 F's that I learned over the years: faith, family, fitness, finances, fun, firm, which is your job or your business, and friends. Viewing life in a more holistic way. You don't want work to crowd everything else out. And you also want to make sure you're clear on your personal mission statement. What is that? Most organizations have one. Very few people have one. Trust me, I want to tell you that. So think about what that means for you. Very, very important, because it's going to serve as a compass. It's going to direct you when you're not even thinking about it. Amen.
It's sort of your personal 30-second elevator pitch, if you will.
It's that, but so I'll share my personal mission statement. My personal mission statement is to use my God-given leadership, analytical, financial skills to help my family and others grow to become all that He designed them to be, while continuing to grow myself.
Perfect.
Mine is simpler than Mike's. Mine is, I'm here to help people. That's my purpose on this earth. And so I'm very fortunate. I work for an organization. I get to do that every day. A lot of people don't have that opportunity, but it's one of those things that I had to come to grips. I say come to grips. You have to listen to understand what your purpose is. And what Mike is right on, understanding that is a key part of success.
Life balance.
If I can jump in, I love the whole mission statement thing that Mike has brought up and Eric has followed up, and I too have a personal mission statement that we're doing, but I was going to also say I don't do Facebook because I'm 107 and I don't like to have to do Facebook. Our company does it, but I don't want to do Facebook. Nor should you. No, I'm kidding. And I don't do LinkedIn, so it's going to be hard to find me. But you can go to the website and you can hit contact me, and you can also see my mission statement there on my website. But anyway, if you want to contact me, just go to the contact thing, and I'd love to hear from you.
What was that URL again?
MarkCabaniss.com.
With 2 S's.
That's right. And that's not cannabis. Cabaniss. Not cannabis. We don't want anyone to go there, President Floyd. You know? Don't laugh too loudly. We will be at your rooms tonight. Okay, let's bring in the drug testing.
Mark, you do live in Nashville.
Any other questions that don't relate to cannabis? Yes. Stand and let us hear it.
Are there any books that you would recommend to college students that are trying to figure out where they want to go in the first place? Or just books in general?
Kelly.
Raising my hand. Simon Sinek, start with why. Because people, it's the concept that people aren't really buying what you sell, they're buying why you're selling it. So why are you doing what you're doing? What drives you? The other thing I would add on to that is you're hearing us talk a lot about mission statements, purpose, what does it mean to live, a purpose life? And I mean, sitting in chapel when I was your age, I probably didn't know what the purpose for my life was other than to graduate on time. But I would tell you that the Bishop T.D. Jakes has a quote that if you can't find your purpose, find your passion, because your passion is going to lead you to your purpose. So at this point, I would be asking, what are the things that are most important to you? What are the causes? And then start to figure out, well, how can I impact based on that?
I've got a couple of books. One I learned about many years ago when I got my first certification as a life executive coach. And it's by a guy named Ron Jensen. It's called Achieving Authentic Success. And you can probably find it for little or nothing out there. Another book I would recommend is by a rabbi, Dr. Rabbi Lapin, and it's called Thou Shalt Prosper. And he gets into everything that we've talked about tonight and more. And it's not about money per se, it's about life and leadership and service and all those wonderful things. Dr. Rabbi Lapin, it's a wonderful book, Thou Shalt Prosper. So those are two. I love to read. I could give you a lot of books. So if you want to talk offline, we can certainly talk more about some other books that have been impactful.
Don't you quote that one quite a bit in your LinkedIn entries? I seem to remember seeing that, one of his quotes in one of your LinkedIn posts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've got two as well, I would suggest. One is called What Color is Your Parachute? And it is so popular, it has been continuously published. Anyone in the room read that book before? Raise your hands. Okay, several of you, a few of you. It's been continually published every year since 1984 or something, and the author has actually now passed away, but his son has carried on updating the book. But it helps you to determine what are my best and most enjoyed skills. I mean, you know, you might love medicine, but be scared of the sight of blood. That's a problem if you're going to be a surgeon, okay? So it's got to, and you might think you're the best singer in the world, but unfortunately, you're the only people who agree with you are your parents. And God bless them, you got good parents in that case, okay? But best and most enjoyed skills. Not only do you enjoy them the most, but you're good at it. So that book will help you determine your best and most enjoyed skills and where do you want to use them geographically. Do I want to live in the South? Do I want to live in the West? Do I want to live in the East? Do I want to live in Africa? Whatever. Where do I want to use those skills? And that's not only geographically, but what kind of organization do I want to use those skills in? A nonprofit? A for-profit, a university, whatever. That's number one. Number two, this book is maybe passé, but I still think it's a fabulous book. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was the big hot book in the 90s, but I still think it has got a lot to say from Stephen Covey, but the 7 Habits.
You can hit me up on pretty much all the platforms. Well, I take that back. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, the gram. If it's
The what?
The gram.
The gram.
Okay.
why are you laughing? Instagram, right? You know what Instagram is, right? But on Twitter, if you see my name by it, it's our PR firm, so it's not me. So the other ones I respond to. The books most of the books I read a lot of different ones, but the ones I like the most, quite frankly, other than my faith books, has to deal with human behavior and how people think. So Malcolm Gladwell's Switch is one of my favorites. Then there's a book called Good to Great. Those are two that I read quite a bit. And then there's one called The Dash, D-A-S-H, and it talks about our life. You know, I'm not being morbid. You were born here, you die here, and then there's a dash, right? You see that? That's really what this is about, is what's your dash going to be about? And so those are books that I read quite often to kind of get me back to where I need to be. But yeah, I will respond, and Dr. Floyd knows that, and everybody knows that from a social media standpoint, I have to, and that's another piece. Because of what I do, I have 2,000 employees. Obviously, I can't communicate with that many face-to-face, and so those are my platforms on how I communicate to them in a way that is talking about the organization, but also they get to know me without having face-to-face time. So, because everybody, why are you on social media? My wife, she's like, you're on social media all the time. Because I have, by 2,000, 80% are under 40. So I'm dealing with people who communicate through social media. So if I'm going to be successful as a communicator, I have to. So that's why. But I do know what the gram is, and I have a 27-year-old daughter.
Can I share one more book? One more book, and this is for the guys. It's by a guy named Patrick Morley. It's called Man in the Mirror, and it's like the 30-something challenges that men face. Young men, old men, it's a great, great book, and it's well worth your time when it comes to reading it. But I'll share one other thing around reading. It's a good question, what books? Most people, I've learned, when they leave high school or college, whenever they finish their formal education, they rarely ever read another book from cover to cover. So developing the habit of reading can be life-changing. I want to encourage you in that. And several people have said this already. Everybody said it. We support you. We're behind you. We're for you. But reading is one of those ways where you can do things for yourself that you might not get taught in an organization. You can actually teach yourself. So finding ways to not rely on your organization or anyone else to be responsible for your development, finding ways to own it yourself can be transformational.
Thank you. I want to thank you personally before, as Tony comes back up to wrap things up for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody, please give them a round of applause.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you. I also want to introduce Cheryl and Chris Pappas are sitting here. Cheryl, will you Cheryl's on our Board of Trustees as well. Y'all, I want you to notice double card swipe tonight, okay? Double card swipe for those of you who care about that. I appreciate you coming out. And let's be real, okay? Let's be real about this. This place is willing to do whatever we need to do to help you. And I want you to know while you're here, you got to grab hold of it, okay? I need you to grab hold of it. I need you to do everything you can to get what you can get while you're here, because you're only here for a little while and then it's over, and then you're out there in the real world, so to speak. Y'all, I want you to take advantage of the Career Center, the Cothran Center. This family has given an enormous gift so that you will have exposure to things like this. So we're going to do more of this. I hope you'll come back, but thank you for coming tonight. It does my heart good to see you here. And I want you to know how much we care about you, and Mars Hill is going to help you. When you leave this place, when you graduate from here, Mars Hill is still going to help you. This center is going to be here for you the rest of your life. So I'm committing that to you tonight, and I want you to know that. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you the rest of the week. God bless you.